I still remember the exact moment my world shattered. The stunned silence in that fancy Munich restaurant, the velvet box trembling in my outstretched hand, and Elsa's wide eyes darting toward the exit before she bolted without a single word. Not a no, not an I'm sorry, not even a pathetic excuse, just the echo of her heels against the hardwood floor as she ran from our future. But what she didn't know then was that you can run from a proposal, but you can't outrun karma, especially when karma has resources, determination, and 5 years to plan the perfect revenge. The year was 1980, and Germany, my homeland, was a place of great hope for me, Joseph Brandt. At 22, I was young and naive, with a head full of dreams about a prosperous and happy life. The Berlin Wall still divided our country, the Cold War tensions lingered in the air, and technology was primitive by today's standards. No internet, no cell phones, no social media to track your ex's every move. Life seemed simpler on the surface. But beneath that simplicity, human emotions ran just as deep and treacherous as they do today. I'd been dating Elsa Vogel for 2 years. She was my first real love, my first great passion, and I was absolutely convinced she would be my last. We spent countless hours sitting on park benches in Munich, or strolling hand in hand through cobblestone streets, mapping out our future together with the confidence of youth. "I want at least 3 children," she'd say, her blue eyes sparkling in the sunlight. 2 boys and a girl. "And a house in the countryside," I'd add, squeezing her hand, "with a garden large enough for the children to play. And summer vacations in Italy," she'd continue, resting her head on my shoulder. Everything felt so tangible, so certain. I loved her with an intensity that consumed me, and she claimed to feel the same, swearing I was the man of her life, her soulmate, her destiny. There was, however, a sensitive subject that occasionally cast shadows over our perfect romance: Klaus Schreiber. He was her ex-boyfriend, and Elsa always assured me that their relationship had ended badly, that he'd cheated on her repeatedly, that he was controlling and jealous, that it was a closed and painful chapter in her life. I, blinded by love and trust, believed every word without question. "Klaus means nothing to me now," she'd insist whenever his name came up. "You're everything he wasn't, Joseph. Kind, faithful, honest." The irony of those words would haunt me later. The day of the proposal came after months of careful planning. I had saved for nearly a year to afford the ring, a delicate diamond set in white gold that cost me 3 months' salary. I chose her favorite restaurant, an intimate Italian place near the Marienplatz, where the owner, an elderly man named Giovanni, knew us by name. I arranged everything meticulously: a corner table adorned with fresh roses, candlelight, a bottle of expensive champagne on ice. My heart thundered in my chest as I led her inside, my palms sweaty around the small velvet box in my pocket. The evening progressed perfectly. Elsa looked radiant in a blue dress that matched her eyes, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. We talked, we laughed, we reminisced about how we met at a mutual friend's birthday party. When dessert arrived, tiramisu, her favorite, I knew it was time. The moment I'd rehearsed in my mind 100 times. I slid from my chair onto one knee, ignoring the sudden hush that fell over the restaurant as other patrons realized what was happening. Elsa's smile froze on her face, something flickering in her eyes that I couldn't quite identify. "Elsa Vogel," I began, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. "These past 2 years have been the happiest of my life. You've shown me what true love means, and I can't imagine my future without you in it." I opened the box, revealing the ring that had cost me so much. "Will you marry me?" The silence that followed seemed to stretch into eternity. I knelt there, vulnerable and exposed, waiting for the yes that would cement our future together. But it never came. Instead, Elsa's face drained of color. Her eyes darted around the restaurant, landing everywhere but on me. Then, without uttering a single word, she pushed back her chair with a screech that cut through the silence, grabbed her purse, and fled. I remained frozen in that kneeling position, the open ring box still extended, as if my brain couldn't process what had just happened. Around me, diners whispered and stared. Some looked away in secondhand embarrassment. Giovanni approached with a sympathetic hand on my shoulder, but I barely felt it. Numbness spread through me, followed by a wave of humiliation so intense it made me physically ill. Eventually, I managed to stand on shaky legs, leave money for the bill, and stumble out into the cold Munich night. I called Elsa's apartment repeatedly from a payphone, but there was no answer. I went to her place and knocked until my knuckles were raw, but the lights remained off. She had vanished. The next few days passed in a blur of confusion and pain. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. The question, why, played on an endless loop in my mind. Had I misread our entire relationship? Was the ring not good enough? Was it too soon? I reached out to her friends, but they claimed ignorance, though their averted gazes told me they knew more than they were saying. The answer came exactly 1 week after the proposal, delivered by a mutual acquaintance named Thomas, who approached me with that particular look of pity reserved for men who've been made fools of by women. "Joseph," he said hesitantly, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, "I thought you should know. Elsa left the country." "Left?" I repeated dumbly. "Where? Why?" Thomas couldn't meet my eyes. "She's in America, New York." He paused, clearly reluctant to deliver the final blow. "She's with Klaus, Joseph. They left together the night you proposed." Those words hit me like a physical force, knocking the air from my lungs. Klaus, the ex-boyfriend she claimed to despise. The man she said had broken her heart. My rival. My replacement. "How long?" I managed to ask, my voice hardly recognizable. Thomas winced. "They've been seeing each other for months, apparently, behind your back. The proposal, I think it forced her to choose." And she had chosen. Not me. Never me. That night, alone in my apartment with a bottle of schnapps, the full weight of the betrayal crashed down on me. It wasn't just rejection. It was deliberate deception. Every "I love you" had been a lie. Every promise false. Every plan for our future a cruel joke at my expense. As the alcohol burned its way down my throat, something inside me hardened. The pain didn't diminish, but it transformed into something else. Rage. Cold, calculating fury. I hurled my glass against the wall, watching it shatter into 1,000 pieces. "You will pay for this," I growled into the empty room. "Both of you. I swear it on my life." 5 years passed. I was no longer the broken shell of a man Elsa had left behind. At 27, I had transformed completely. Physically, mentally, professionally. I'd thrown myself into work at my family's manufacturing business, using my intelligence and newfound ruthlessness to expand our operations and triple our profits. I trained obsessively at a boxing gym, transforming my once slender frame into something hard and dangerous. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had become a weapon I wielded with precision. On a crisp autumn evening in Berlin, I found myself at an upscale nightclub at the insistence of business associates. The club was exactly what I expected. Too loud, too crowded, too desperate in its pursuit of pleasure. I was about to leave when the floor show began, and a male dancer took the stage. He moved with fluid grace, but it wasn't his physical presence that caught my interest. It was the expression in his eyes. Behind the practiced smile, I recognized something familiar, pain masked by bravado. His eyes were those of someone who had also been betrayed. When the performance ended, I waited at the bar until he emerged from backstage, now dressed in tight jeans and a simple black shirt. He was immediately surrounded by admirers, but I could see the weariness beneath his charm. I approached when the crowd thinned, sliding onto the bar stool next to him. "I don't accept private invitations," he said immediately, not bothering to look at me. "I'm not interested in buying your time," I replied calmly. "Just your attention for about 5 minutes." That earned me a suspicious glance. Up close, he was younger than I'd initially thought, perhaps 24 or 25, with sharp cheekbones and intelligent eyes. "You have 2 minutes," he said, taking the drink I'd ordered, "and you're wasting them." "My name is Joseph Brandt," I began, "and I have a proposition that has nothing to do with your professional services." He snorted. "Let me guess, you're a talent scout, a photographer? I've heard every line." "I'm a businessman," I corrected, "and I need someone with particular skills for a personal project." "What kind of skills?" he asked, curiosity fighting with caution. acting, charm, the ability to make people, particularly women, trust you. I took a sip of my drink. And a certain moral flexibility. He laughed then, a genuine sound. Tomoyam. Moral flexibility? That's a new euphemism. What's your name? I asked. He hesitated. Benno, he said finally. Benno Kraus. Well, Benno Kraus, how would you like to leave this life behind, permanently? No more dancing for strangers. I can offer you enough money to start fresh, anywhere you want. Wariness returned to his eyes. What's the catch? Because there's always a catch. The catch is that you helped me destroy the woman who nearly destroyed me. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Benno studied me for a long moment. I finish at 2. Meet me at the cafe across the street if you're serious. He walked away without waiting for my response. At 2:15 a.m., I sat in the nearly empty cafe, wondering if I'd made a fool of myself. But at 2:30, the door opened and Benno entered, now dressed in a leather jacket with his stage makeup washed off. He slid into the seat across from me. Tell me everything, he said simply. So I did. I told him about Elsa, about the proposal, about the betrayal. I told him about Klaus and how they'd fled to New York. I told him about the 5 years of pain and planning. I want her to feel what I felt. I finished, my voice low and intense. I want her to experience the same public humiliation, the same betrayal by someone she trusts completely. And I want Klaus to witness it all. Benno remained silent throughout, his face giving away nothing. Now he leaned back, arms crossed. You've been planning this for 5 years? That's dedicated. Obsessive, you mean? He shrugged. Why now, and why me, why May? Why now? Because I finally have the resources to do it properly. As for why you... I paused. Because you understand. I saw it in your eyes. You've been betrayed too. Something flickered across his face. Surprise at being seen so clearly. You don't know anything about me. I know enough, I countered. I know pain when I see it. How much? He finally asked. 200,000 Deutsche Mark, half before, half after, plus all expenses paid in New York. His eyebrows shot up at the figure, enough to buy a nice house or fund a completely new start anywhere in the world. Why would you spend that much on revenge? I leaned forward, holding his gaze. Because it's worth it to me. Because I haven't had a single day of peace in 5 years. Another long silence stretched between us. I could almost see the calculations happening behind Benno's eyes. I have conditions, he said finally. Name them. I'm not sleeping with her. I'll make her want me. I'll make her willing to betray Klaus, but I won't actually do it. I nodded. Fair enough. And I need a new identity for the job. New papers. New background. I can arrange that. And afterwards, I want no connection to any of this. The money goes into an offshore account. We never met. Agreed. Benno extended his hand across the table. Then you have yourself a deal, Joseph Brandt. As we shook hands, I felt a strange connection forming, not friendship exactly, but a partnership forged in shared pain. Why are you really doing this? I asked. It can't just be for the money. A shadow crossed Benno's face. Let's just say I understand the need for justice, or revenge. Sometimes the line blurs. Who was she? I pressed, sensing there was a specific story. Benno's jaw tightened. He, and it doesn't matter anymore. I nodded, respecting his reticence. We leave for New York in 2 weeks. I'll have everything arranged by then. As we parted ways outside the cafe, the cool night air carrying the distinctive scent of Berlin, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Anticipation. Not happiness, but a fierce, hungry eagerness for what was to come. The game was finally beginning, and I intended to win. New York City in 1988 was a study in contrasts, opulent wealth alongside desperate poverty, gleaming skyscrapers casting shadows over graffiti-covered subway stations. It suited my mood perfectly. Benno and I arrived in late October, checking into separate rooms at the Plaza Hotel. We had spent the previous 2 weeks creating his new identity in meticulous detail. He would be Benjamin Weber, the son of a German banking executive and an American mother, educated at Oxford, now working as an independent art dealer. This role would give him natural access to the art gallery, where my private investigator had discovered Elsa now worked as an assistant manager. Klaus, meanwhile, had found success as a financial consultant. They lived together in a brownstone in the Upper West Side, not yet married, but by all accounts, settled into domesticity. The thought of them building a life together, while I had spent years haunted by their betrayal, made my blood boil. Remember, I told Benno as we reviewed our plan one final time, the goal is to make her fall for you completely, make her willing to risk everything, but it has to be her decision, her betrayal. The first phase was reconnaissance. We needed to understand their routines, their social circle, their vulnerabilities. Within a week, we had a comprehensive picture of their lives. Elsa worked Tuesday through Saturday at the gallery in Soho, taking lunch at the same cafe almost every day around 1 p.m. Klaus worked longer hours, often not returning home until after 7. They socialized mainly on weekends, with a small circle of friends that included several other German expatriates. They seemed happy, settled. The knowledge was like acid in my stomach. Benno began his approach carefully. His first encounter with Elsa was staged to appear completely coincidental, a visit to her gallery during a busy exhibition opening. The second time, 3 days later, he asked her about a particular painting. By the third visit, she remembered him. "Mr. Weber," she greeted him with a professional smile. "Back again so soon?" "I find myself drawn to your collection," Benno replied smoothly, his accent perfectly calibrated, German enough to create a connection, but polished by his supposed international education. "And if I'm honest, to your expertise." I watched this interaction from across the street, seated at a cafe with a clear view of the gallery's entrance. Even from a distance, I could see the slight flush on Elsa's cheeks at the compliment. She hadn't changed much in 5 years. Still slender, still blonde, still beautiful in that effortless way that had captivated me. Seeing her again sent a jolt through me, a complicated mixture of longing and hatred. Over the next few weeks, Benno gradually increased his presence in Elsa's life. He became a regular at the gallery, always professional, but increasingly friendly. He happened to run into her at her usual lunch spot. He mentioned a German restaurant he'd discovered that reminded him of home. Each evening, he reported back to me in meticulous detail. Elsa was cautious at first. She had Klaus, after all. But Benno was patient and skilled. He knew when to push and when to retreat, when to show interest and when to appear indifferent. "She mentioned Klaus today," he told me one evening in early December. "Said he works too much, that they hardly see each other anymore." I felt a surge of satisfaction. "That's good. She's starting to confide in you." Benno nodded, but there was something reserved in his expression. "Joseph, are you sure about all this? It's been 5 years. They seem stable." I stiffened. "Having second thoughts? I can find someone else." "That's not what I said." Benno's eyes flashed with irritation. "I made a commitment and I'll see it through. I'm just making an observation." "Well, observe less and act more," I snapped, immediately regretting my tone. Benno had been nothing but professional, and I needed him. "I'm sorry, it's just seeing her again." "I understand." His expression softened slightly. "But remember, this only works if we stay clear-headed. Emotion makes people sloppy." Christmas approached, bringing a flurry of gallery events. Benno used these social occasions to deepen his connection with Elsa. He sent her small, thoughtful gifts, a rare book on an artist she admired, German chocolates from a specialty shop. Nothing overtly romantic, nothing that would trigger alarm bells, but gestures that spoke of attention, of care. Slowly, Elsa began to respond. She sought him out at events. She called him at his hotel on flimsy pretexts. She lingered over lunch, their conversations stretching well beyond her usual break time. On New Year's Eve, Benno attended a party hosted by the gallery owner, a party Elsa and Klaus would be attending. I waited in his hotel room, pacing like a caged animal while he attended the party on my behalf. He returned just after 2 a.m., his bow tie undone and hanging loose around his neck. "Well?" I demanded before he'd even closed the door. "They're in trouble," he said simply, pouring himself a drink. "Klaus barely spoke to her all night. When he did, it was tense. They left separately. He went home. She's still at the party." A savage joy surged through me. "Did you speak with her?" Of course, we danced. He took a long swallow of his drink. She had too much champagne, said some things she probably shouldn't have. Like what? I pressed, hungry for details. Like she's not happy, like she wonders if she made a mistake. Benno met my eyes steadily. Like she finds herself thinking about me. The words hit me with unexpected force. It was working. After all this time, all this planning, it was actually working. Elsa was falling for another man, just as she had fallen for Klaus while with me. History was repeating itself, but this time, I was the author, not the victim. It's time to accelerate things, I decided. The foundation is laid. Now we need to give her a reason to act on these feelings. Benno suggested an exhibition opening in Boston, a private showing of German expressionist works. He would invite her, professionally of course. It would mean an overnight stay. The Boston trip proved to be the turning point. Elsa told Klaus it was purely professional, a networking opportunity too valuable to miss. They stayed in separate hotel rooms, all very proper, but spent the entire weekend together, visiting the exhibition, dining in intimate restaurants, walking the historic streets of a city where no one knew them. Nothing physical happened. Benno was adamant about that. But something fundamental shifted in their relationship. A line had been crossed, not in action, but in intention. Elsa returned to New York different somehow, her professional mask discarded in favor of something more vulnerable. The weeks that followed saw a rapid evolution. Their lunches became longer, their conversations deeper. She began confiding in him about her relationship with Klaus, how they'd grown apart, how the passion had faded, how she sometimes wondered if they'd made a terrible mistake in leaving Germany together. She's never mentioned you, Benno told me one evening in late January. Not by name, at least. She's talked about past relationships, about regrets, but never specifically about you. I wasn't sure if that hurt more or less than if she'd spoken about me. To be so thoroughly erased from her narrative felt like another betrayal. February brought heavy snow to New York. During one particularly fierce storm, Benno called Elsa, expressing concern about her commute home. The subways were running sporadically, taxis nearly impossible to find. He offered his hotel's car service. She accepted. When the car arrived at her brownstone, she didn't get out immediately. They sat talking in the back seat, the snow falling thick around them, creating a private world. She kissed me, Benno reported later, his voice carefully neutral. Not the other way around. She initiated it. I felt a strange tightness in my chest. And nothing. I kissed her back, briefly, then stopped. Said we needed to be sure that this wasn't something to rush into, that she needed to think about Klaus. I almost laughed at the irony. Benno, my hired seducer, playing the role of moral conscience. Good. She'll want you more now. She already does, he confirmed. She called me an hour after she got home. Said she couldn't stop thinking about me. Said she hadn't felt this way in years. The plan was working even better than I'd hoped. Elsa wasn't just attracted to Benjamin. She was emotionally invested. An emotional investment was what would make the eventual revelation so much more devastating. It's time, I decided, for the final act. Valentine's Day, I continued, the idea crystallizing as I spoke. What could be more perfect? The day of lovers. She'll be expecting Klaus to be working late. Invite her to your hotel suite, and when she's there, when she's made her choice, that's when I'll appear. Are you sure that's how you want to do this? It seems theatrical. I smiled thinly. That's precisely the point, Benno. This isn't just about hurting them. It's about making a statement. As Valentine's Day approached, everything fell into place with an almost eerie precision. Benno invited Elsa to his suite for a private dinner. The implication clear. She accepted with barely a moment's hesitation. Klaus, predictably, was scheduled to work late. The stage was set. After 5 long years of planning, the moment of reckoning was finally at hand. Valentine's Day arrived with perfect seasonal weather, a light dusting of snow that made the city look magical rather than merely cold. From my hidden position in the adjoining room of Benno's suite, I could hear the final preparations being made. Crystal glasses being arranged, champagne being chilled. music selected with careful consideration. Benno had transformed the suite into a temple of seduction. Dozens of candles cast a warm, flickering glow. The table was set with fine china and silver, a meal from one of the city's most exclusive restaurants waiting to be served. A trail of rose petals led suggestively toward the bedroom. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Benno asked me for the final time, adjusting his tie in the mirror. He looked impeccable in a tailored black suit. "I've never been more certain of anything," I assured him, checking my watch. It was nearly 7. Elsa would arrive any minute. "Remember, let her make all the advances. We need her intentions to be unmistakable." He nodded, though something like reluctance flickered across his face. "And Klaus, you're sure he'll come?" "He'll come," I confirmed. The anonymous tip I'd arranged, a concerned friend calling to tell him his girlfriend was meeting another man at the plaza on Valentine's Day, would ensure it. A soft knock at the door signaled her arrival. Benno took a deep breath and went to answer it. I retreated further into the adjoining room, leaving the connecting door open just enough to observe without being seen. Elsa stood in the hallway, stunning in a simple black dress that accentuated her slender figure. Her hair was longer now, falling past her shoulders in loose waves. But her smile, that smile that had once been my whole world, was exactly the same. "Benjamin," she breathed, taking in the romantic scene. "This is incredible." "No more than you deserve," Benno replied smoothly, taking her coat and offering her champagne. "Happy Valentine's Day, Elsa." She accepted the drink, her fingers lingering on his. "I shouldn't be here," she said, but her tone held no real conviction. "Do you want to leave?" Benno asked, giving her an easy out. She shook her head. "No, I want to be exactly where I am." From my hidden vantage point, I watched as they dined and talked, as the carefully maintained distance between them gradually diminished. Elsa spoke more freely than she ever had, the champagne and the intimate setting loosening her reserve. "I thought he was everything I wanted," she confessed, her words slightly slurred. "Exciting, ambitious, passionate, but now it's like living with a stranger. We have nothing in common anymore except our past." "What about your future?" Benno asked, refilling her glass. "What do you want that to look like?" She looked at him directly, all pretense abandoned. "I want it to include you." My heart clenched at the words, at the naked desire in her voice. This was the woman who had once pledged her love to me, now declaring herself to another man with the same conviction. Some things never changed. The meal concluded, they moved to the sofa, the space between them shrinking with each passing moment. When Benno touched her face, tracing the line of her cheekbone with gentle fingers, she leaned into his touch like a cat seeking affection. "I've wanted this for so long," she whispered. "Wanted you." "What about Klaus?" Benno asked, maintaining his role to the very end. Elsa's expression hardened slightly. "Klaus is my past. I've stayed out of habit, I suppose. Fear of change. But I'm not afraid anymore." And then she kissed him, not the hesitant, uncertain kiss of their previous encounter, but something passionate, deliberate. Her hands moved to his shirt, beginning to unbutton it with clear intent. It was time. I sent the text message I'd prepared to Klaus's phone. "Room 1412, see for yourself." Benno gently disentangled himself from Elsa's embrace. "Perhaps we should move somewhere more comfortable," he suggested, nodding almost imperceptibly toward the bedroom. She smiled, a mixture of nervousness and anticipation in her eyes. "Yes, I'd like that." They moved toward the bedroom, Elsa leading the way. As they disappeared from my view, I slipped from my hiding place into the main room of the suite, positioning myself near the entrance. Any minute now, Klaus would arrive. I didn't have to wait long. Less than 10 minutes later, a furious pounding on the door announced his arrival. From the bedroom, I heard Elsa's startled exclamation, followed by hurried movements. I opened the door to find Klaus standing there, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. He was older than in my memories, his once boyish good looks hardened by time and stress, but I recognized him instantly, the man who had stolen my future. "Who the hell are you, ho?" he demanded, trying to push past me. "Where is she?" "Hello, Klaus," I said, my voice eerily calm. "It's been a long time." Confusion flickered across his face, followed by dawning recognition. Joseph? Joseph Brandt?" Before I could respond, Elsa emerged from the bedroom, hastily adjusting her dress, her face pale with shock. Behind her, Benno appeared, his shirt partially unbuttoned, but his composure intact. "Klaus!" Elsa gasped. "What are you doing here? How did you—" Then her eyes fell on me, and all color drained from her face. "Joseph?" The moment stretched between us, 5 years of pain and planning distilled into a single perfect instant of revelation. I savored it, committing every detail to memory, the confusion in her eyes, the dawning horror as understanding began to take root. "Surprise," I said softly. "Did you miss me, Elsa?" Klaus looked between us, bewilderment warring with his anger. "What the hell is going on here? You know this man?" Elsa seemed incapable of speech, her eyes fixed on me as if seeing a ghost. "Allow me to explain," I said, gesturing for them to sit. Neither moved. Elsa and I were engaged to be married, once upon a time, or at least I thought we were. I proposed, she ran, straight into your arms, as I later discovered. Understanding dawned on Klaus's face. "You're the ex she never talks about, the one before me." "The one she left for you," I confirmed, though apparently history repeats itself. "I don't understand," Elsa finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here? How did you find us?" "Oh, I've known where you were for years," I replied casually. "I've just been waiting for the right moment." Her eyes darted to Benno, sudden suspicion replacing confusion. "Benjamin?" Benno gave a small, apologetic shrug. "Benjamin Weber doesn't exist, I'm afraid. My name is Benno Kraus. I'm an actor, hired to play a role, a very specific role." The blood drained completely from Elsa's face as understanding crashed over her. "This was all a setup? Everything? All these months?" "Everything," I confirmed, satisfaction coursing through me at the devastation in her eyes. Every conversation, every shared confidence, every kiss, all carefully orchestrated to bring us to this moment. Klaus, who had been processing this revelation in stunned silence, suddenly lunged at me, his face contorted with rage. "You sick bastard!" I was ready for him. The years of boxing training kicked in instinctively. I sidestepped his clumsy attack, caught his outstretched arm, and used his own momentum to slam him face first into the wall. He crashed into an end table, sending a lamp crashing to the floor. "Klaus!" Elsa screamed, rushing toward him. I blocked her path. "Not so fast, Elsa. We're not done here." Klaus struggled to his feet, blood trickling from his nose. His eyes burned with hatred. "Why? Why go to all this trouble? It's been 5 years, for God's sake." "Why?" I repeated, genuine surprise in my voice. "Because you stole my future. Because you took what was mine and never looked back. Because you both deserve to know what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trust." "I never belonged to you," Elsa hissed, finding her voice at last. Her initial shock was giving way to anger. "I was never yours to lose." "No, then why accept my invitations? Why plan our future together? Why let me believe, right up until the moment I proposed, that you loved me?" The old pain flared, bright and sharp. "You could have ended things honestly. Instead, you humiliated me and disappeared without a word." "I was young," she protested. "I was confused. I didn't know how to tell you." "And now?" I gestured around the suite. "Are you still young, still confused, or just selfish and faithless by nature?" Klaus turned to Elsa, his expression a mixture of hurt and disgust. "Were you really going to sleep with him?" "On Valentine's Day while I was at work." She flinched. "Klaus, it's not what you think. I was confused. Benno, he made me feel—" "He made you feel nothing," I interrupted coldly. "He played a part, said what you wanted to hear, just like you did with me all those years ago." Klaus suddenly grabbed a heavy crystal decanter from the bar cart and hurled it at me. I ducked, and it shattered against the wall behind me, showering the carpet with glass and expensive bourbon. "You've ruined everything," he shouted, his face red with fury. "You pathetic, obsessed psychopath." He charged at me again, this time more strategically. We collided in the center of the room, grappling with each other like street fighters rather than gentlemen. I felt his fist connect with my jaw, sending pain shooting through my skull. But the years of rage I'd suppressed gave me strength. I drove my knee into his stomach, heard the air rush from his lungs, then delivered a right hook that sent him sprawling across the coffee table, which collapsed beneath his weight. Elsa screamed, backing away from the violence. Benno moved to restrain her, not roughly but firmly, preventing her from interfering or escaping. Klaus lay amid the wreckage of the table, bleeding and wheezing. I stood over him, tasting blood in my mouth, but feeling more alive than I had in years. "How does it feel, Klaus?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. "To have everything you thought was real, revealed as a lie. To be made a fool of, to be betrayed." "You're insane," he gasped, clutching his ribs. "Completely insane." "No," I corrected him. "I'm just giving you what you deserve. Both of you." Elsa struggled against Benno's grip. "Let me go," she demanded, her voice breaking. "Haven't you done enough?" I turned to her, the woman I had once loved beyond reason. "Enough? Was it enough when you left me kneeling in that restaurant? Was it enough when you ran away with him without a word of explanation? Was it enough when you erased me from your life as if I'd never existed?" Tears streamed down her face, her mascara creating dark trails on her cheeks. "I made a mistake, Joseph. A terrible mistake. I've regretted it every day." "Liar," I spat. "You've never given me a second thought." Until tonight. Klaus had managed to pull himself up to a sitting position, leaning against the overturned sofa. "So what now? You've had your revenge. You've made your point. What happens next?" It was a good question. In all my planning, I'd never thought beyond this moment, beyond the revelation and the satisfaction of seeing their pain. What did happen next? Now? I straightened my jacket, which had been disheveled in the fight. "Now I walk away, just like you both did to me. I leave you to deal with the wreckage of your relationship, knowing that whatever happens, you'll never trust each other again." I nodded to Benno, who released Elsa and moved to stand beside me. She immediately rushed to Klaus, kneeling beside him in the debris of the coffee table. "Was any of it real?" she asked Benno, her voice small and broken. "Any part of it?" He hesitated, something like genuine regret crossing his face. "The lies were real," he said finally. "The connection was manufactured." I turned to leave, Benno at my side, but at the door I paused, looking back at them one last time. Elsa cradling Klaus's bloodied face, both of them broken in different ways. "Goodbye, Elsa," I said softly. "I truly loved you once." With that, we walked out, closing the door on the wreckage of their relationship. As we waited for the elevator, I could hear their voices raised in accusation and denial, the inevitable collapse of trust already underway. "Was it worth it?" Benno asked quietly as the elevator doors closed behind us. "Do you feel better now?" I considered the question seriously. The hollow feeling I'd expected to be filled with satisfaction hadn't disappeared. But alongside it was something else, a sense of completion, of a chapter finally closed. "I don't know," I admitted, "but it's done. That's what matters." We exited the hotel into the cold February night, the snow still falling gently. New York continued its restless rhythm, indifferent to the drama that had just played out within the plaza's walls. "What will you do now?" Benno asked as we stood on the sidewalk, breath fogging in the chilly air. I looked up at the snow-filled sky, feeling strangely light, as if a weight I'd carried for so long had finally been lifted. "I don't know. Go home, I suppose. Start over. What about you?" He smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. "I have a small fortune in my bank account and a whole world to explore. I think I'll start with somewhere warm. Greece, maybe, or Spain." "You earned it," I assured him. "You played your part perfectly." "Too perfectly, perhaps," he mused. "I almost feel bad for her." Almost. We shared a knowing look, both understanding that in another life, in different circumstances, we might have been friends beyond this strange partnership. "Goodbye, Joseph Brandt," Benno said, extending his hand. "I hope you find what you're looking for." I shook his hand firmly. "Goodbye, Benno Kraus. Enjoy your new beginning." With that, we separated, heading in opposite directions into the snowy night. I didn't look back at the plaza, at the window of Suite 1412, where Elsa and Klaus were confronting the ruins of their relationship. There was no need. That chapter of my life was finally, truly over. The years passed, I returned to Germany, and threw myself into building a life worth living. The family business continued to thrive under my leadership, expanding throughout Europe and eventually globally. The hollow feeling that had plagued me through my confrontation with Elsa and Klaus gradually faded, replaced by a cautious optimism. In 1992, I met Helena at a business conference in Frankfurt. She was nothing like Elsa. Dark where Elsa was fair, pragmatic where Elsa had been dreamy, honest to the point of bluntness where Elsa had woven beautiful lies. We married 2 years later, a small ceremony with only close family and friends. Our daughter Sophie arrived the following year, followed by sons Thomas and Michael. As for Elsa and Klaus, I heard little about them initially. It was Benno who eventually brought me news, reaching out unexpectedly in 1997 with a brief letter from Barcelona. He had established himself there as a gallery owner, using the money from our venture to build a legitimate business. And he had learned of Klaus's fate. After that night at the plaza, Elsa and Klaus had separated almost immediately. Klaus returned to Germany alone, his trust shattered. He fell into drinking, his promising career derailed by increasingly erratic behavior. In '97, just 9 years after our confrontation, he died of liver failure, alone in a Munich apartment. Elsa's fate remained unknown until 2015, when an obituary in a Munich newspaper caught my attention. Elsa Vogel, age 54, had died after a long struggle with mental illness. After returning to Germany in the mid-1990s, she had been unable to rebuild her life, suffering from severe depression and anxiety that eventually required institutional care. She died without family, mourned only by the staff of the facility where she had spent her final years. The news affected me strangely. I felt no satisfaction in their downfalls, no vindication in their suffering. If anything, I felt a distant sadness for lives so squandered. Was it my fault? I asked Helena, showing her Elsa's obituary, my hands trembling slightly. Helena took the paper, her eyes scanning the few lines. No, she said finally, her voice gentle but firm. You hurt her, yes. You were cruel, but we all make our own choices in the end. Elsa made hers long before that night in New York and long after. Benno and I maintained a sporadic correspondence over the years. He never married, preferring a succession of passionate affairs to permanent commitment. His gallery prospered, becoming a respected fixture in Barcelona's art scene. When Helena and I visited Spain for our 20th anniversary, he hosted us for dinner, a far cry from our clandestine meetings in Berlin and New York. You found peace, he observed as we parted. Not a question, but a statement. I'm glad. And you, I asked, have you found what you were looking for? He smiled enigmatically. I found many things, including eventually forgiveness for the man who broke my heart all those years ago. Perhaps that's enough. Now in Huef, I am an old man with gray hair and lined hands. As I sit on the terrace of my home outside Munich, watching my grandchildren play in the garden below, I often reflect on that young man consumed by rage and hurt, and the path that led me here, to peace, to family, to a life worth living. My oldest grandchild, Jakob, recently turned 18. Last week, he asked me for advice about a girl who had broken his heart, his young face earnest and pained. What should I do, Opa? He asked. I can't stop thinking about her, about making her sorry. I placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling the weight of my years and experiences. The best revenge, I told him, is to live well, to build a life so full of purpose and joy that the pain becomes just a distant memory. He seemed dubious, of course. At 18, pain feels eternal, betrayal unforgivable. But he nodded, respecting if not fully understanding. As the sun sets over my garden, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I think about the long, strange journey from that devastating night in 1983 to this peaceful evening in 2025. About the young man consumed by rage and hurt, and the old man who finally found peace, not in vengeance, but in letting go. The game is over, and in the truest sense, there were no winners, only survivors, shaped by choices that cannot be unmade, forged in fires of our own creation. I survived. I healed. I built a life worth living. And that, I've learned, is the only victory that matters.